talk to us about what could happen if this does pass. What is the current map? What does that look like now? And what could a new map look like?
Yeah, so the current map is 6-5, 6 Democrats, 5 Republicans. And the new map has the potential to result in a 10-1 map, 10 Democrats, 1 Republican. And so I think, Republicans would lose up to 4 seats.
Which is very significant.
Yeah, I mean, it is, I guess, in a sense, that, but the other thing too is like, it is temporary. The independent redistricting commission would kick back in at the end of the decade. And so that's kind of part of the pitch for Democrats, is that like, hey, look, this might seem, like a sort of extraordinary measure, but we kind of have extraordinary times, and this is only kind of temporary. And so it's interesting. There was a poll that came out today from a really great polling company, State Navigate. You probably heard of them. But they asked folks, they like showed the 2 maps to voters without like identifying what the maps were. Just kind of like, what do you think of these 2 maps? And, they both, to different voters, they both look gerrymandered, right? And like, it was just, and so it's, and as you would expect, like the responses to the polling was just very partisan. If you were a Republican, like you were against this push, and if you were a Democrat, you were very much in favor of it. And ultimately, the poll showed that there's like a 5-point advantage for the yes vote right now.
Okay.
According to this poll, which is a really like a great pollster, they got the 2025 election right. So it's definitely worth looking up. I can send you the link if maybe worth sharing with like your audience. But
that would be great.
Yeah,
we seem to be in the midst of an arms race when it comes to redistricting. I know I've been covering politics for a couple of decades, and this used to be a process that we would cover every 10 years. Then Texas kind of kicked things off by doing their midterm redistricting, and now we're looking at redistricting fights every 2 or 4 years, which was not the way it used to be. And of course, there used to be the debate where it was just, oh, well, populations have changed and we need to be conscious of that. Now it's pretty explicit. It's, Trump saying, find me 5 Republican seats in Texas, and Gavin Newsom in California, the Democratic governor, saying, fine, we'll cut as many Republican seats as we can to counter that. And now you see Virginia and Maryland and Ohio and Indiana, lots of fights in heavier Democratic or Republican states that are retaliating. Michael, do you see this process ending at any point, or is this just the new normal in politics?
Oof. That's hard to say for me personally. When you were talking about that, though, I was thinking about what happened in Hungary, with Viktor Orban getting overwhelmingly voted out of power, and just kind of thinking of that as maybe a crack in the dam, that this kind of seemingly endless politics of like division. And I think, people are just exhausted, like Jon Stewart had a joke about how like typically the presidency is supposed to age the presidency, not like the people. But we all feel like just so tired, of everything that's happening. And so I will say in Virginia, again, it's temporary, right? We're supposed to revert back to the norm that you described. So that's kind of the hope. And it's also worth noting that in Virginia, Democrats are showing the maps. They publish the maps before voters make this vote. I think in North Carolina, they didn't even, I don't even know if they asked the voters, right? So it's like, I think Democrats in Virginia were very sensitive to the perception that they were not being transparent, even if, Republicans have taken issue with the language of the referendum, which includes the word fairness, right? Which, but to answer your question, do I see this ending? I think you have to. Like, you can't get up in the morning and think this is it. Like you just have to think, well, we have to keep fighting somehow and keep participating and reading really good journalism. I mean, that's the key, right?
I know you've done a lot of reporting on this fight, and you have done a great job in outlining who the players are for the referendum, against it. And there's some really big names that are involved, not just in Virginia, but nationally. There's a group that's linked to Peter Thiel, a tech billionaire. I know House Speaker Mike Johnson has been in campaigning. Talk with us a little bit, walk us through who are the big hitters on the pro side and the anti side, and what kind of impact is that having?
Yeah, that's a great question. Because I guess the thought process is you want to bring in people who are going to get, people excited, big star power. I mean, I think one of the biggest endorsements the Yes side got was this video message from former President Barack Obama, urging people to vote. His, Attorney General Eric Holder visited Virginia. Virginia's been visited by House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, who actually attended Spanberger's inauguration back in January, before this when this was bubbling up. And Spanberger, she has been, she put out a video message about it. And so, yeah, and then on the no side, like you mentioned, Eric Cantor, Youngkin, former Republican Governor Youngkin, was stumping for it. Former Attorney General Jason Miyares has been a pretty consistently stumping for the no vote. And as you mentioned, this group that was linked to Peter Thiel has been pouring money into it. So, pretty good. I mean, Trump, actually I haven't seen much of what Trump has said about it. I mean, he was in Charlottesville the other day. So I have to imagine I didn't see what he said about it, though. Yeah.
Is it a possible technique for Republicans to try and keep Trump out of this because he's such a polarizing figure?
I would think so. I mean, he hasn't been, the messaging around the no campaign has not been talking about Trump, right? Mm-hmm. And the yes campaign has been much more about how this is, when you ask, the first day of early voting, I was in Alexandria, completely by chance, and this black SUV pulled up, and out steps Mark Warner to vote early on the first day of early voting, which is just, I was just really lucky to be there. And I asked him, why'd you vote yes? And he said something that, Democrats have said consistently, is just that everyone wants to know how they can push back against Trump. This is how, right? This is your way. This is your tangible way to show up and feel like you did something. Mm-hmm. So certainly Trump is, they're trying to make this about Trump, and Republicans are just trying to kind of quarantine that and just be nope, this is about Virginia. This is about fairness. This is an unfair power grab from Democrats, but while also supporting gerrymandering that's happening in, Indiana and, mm-hmm. or, North Carolina. So, yeah.